Hey guys, welcome back to Ripe Stories. This video is all about entitled sovereign citizen Karens getting what they deserve. Let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled Confrontation with a Sovereign Citizen. So I work at a liquor store that just updated our carding policy from anyone that looks under 40 to every customer every time. Last night, a man that is in his 60s came in and was deeply offended that I dared to ask for his ID. After going back and forth for a few minutes and me trying to gently explain that it is a new policy and I cannot sell to him without seeing it, he finally gets it out, flashes it at me, and moves to put it away without me having a chance to see anything on it. I was sick of his BS at this point and told him I needed to physically have his ID in my hand. I didn't actually need to, but was well within legal rights to request it, as it is one way to check for fake IDs. His response was to call me an effin' bitch and throw the card past me with enough force to knock over one of the half-pint bottles on display behind me. I picked up his ID, took my time picking up the bottle that fell and straightening ones that were pushed out of position, and fully intended on refusing the sale on grounds of my zero a-hole policy when I noticed that Grandpa Karen's ID expired in 2021. I smiled real big and used my best customer service voice to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir, but unfortunately, your ID has expired and I cannot legally complete the sale. You will need to go to the DMV to get it updated before I or anyone else can legally sell to you." I was expecting anger and screaming and threats, but no, he actually laughed. He said that he did not need to have an ID because he is a sovereign citizen and cannot be held to the laws of the United States, and that I would be violating his rights if I did not sell to him. He went on to say that I will sell to him or he will have no choice but to get the police involved and would likely have to sue me, violating his constitutional rights and emotional damage. I was baffled by the number of contradictions he had so confidently uttered, and my only comeback in the moment was that I am held to laws of our country and state, and they say that I cannot sell to anyone without a valid ID. I also told him that he was welcome to get the police involved if he really wanted to, but he would have to wait for them outside, and I'm sure that they would love to hear all about how he's been driving without a license for 3 years. Well, that is when the anger came. He threw the case of beer and half a gallon of vodka he'd been trying to buy onto the floor and then kicked the display while he was screaming incoherent nonsense and several slurs at me. He even tried to get the only other customer in the store to side with him, which did not happen. The other customer is an absolute gem of a person and had moved to place himself between me and Grandpa Karen as soon as he got violent and stayed between us until police arrived. I got to press the panic button for the first time, charges were pressed, and he was trespassed from the store. He was not taken into custody, but his truck was impounded and his daughter had to come pick him up. I have been at this job for nearly 2 years and it was by far the most dramatic interaction I've ever had with someone there. And the next one is titled Sovereign Citizen Karen Pulls Gun on Me, Insists that my rural property house belongs to her. And yeah guys, if you have watched until here and enjoy stories about sovereign citizens, then please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel because that helps me tremendously. Thank you so much for the support. So I live in the Midwest. There's a lot of stereotypes about the entire place being just flat lands or plains and nothing else, and I would like to tell you that while that is not completely true, it is not really a stretch. The Midwest is not completely devoid of big towns or cities, but you could go for miles on end without encountering another soul or another town. If I did not grow up here, I would probably be afraid of it. I live near an urban area. The city is not incredibly big, probably only 10 square miles total, but it is bustling. A lot of people live there, at least from what I could tell. I only come into the city once a week to restock on groceries and whatnot, and there's always a lot of people driving around. It is certainly no small town. Anyways, I live a little ways off the highway in a rural area that is mostly surrounded by empty fields. I own a little bit of the land, only a mile or two of the grassy area. I highly doubt that the local government really pays attention to that sort of thing, but I wanted the area to myself so I could allow my dog Betty to run around and have a lot of free space. You would think that living alone is boring or a little sad, but I'm honestly content with it. I'm an introvert, so it's already my natural state of being, for lack of better wording. I have my dog with me and I'm content living out on my own. I do work online so I don't see a lot of people. I occasionally get visits from friends and family and in turn I visit them, but otherwise I'm just chilling on my own. It's honestly great. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting outside of my house. It's a beautiful day out and I often enjoy watching the sunset. It is my favorite type of day. I usually just sit there for a bit with Betty, smoking or drinking something, listening to music, just relaxing and enjoying nature, you know. Betty runs around and we both have a good time until it is dark out and we head back in. On this particular day, I'm sitting outside as usual, focused on the sun. Sunlight makes me pretty sleepy and it was pretty tranquil, so I started dozing off. I got this comfortable rocking chair too. I know it makes me sound old, so just leaning on it was making me feel pretty relaxed. But then all of a sudden, I woke up because Betty just started barking. I was still disoriented a bit because I'd just woken up, but once my brain finally began working, I saw that Betty was at the gate that blocks the front of my house from the road, barking at someone standing outside. I looked up to see this middle-aged woman outside my gate scowling at Betty. I was very shocked, like I said. I don't get many visitors and I'd never seen this woman before in my life, so there was no reason for her to be there. I assumed she might have been some government official, maybe a census collector or something like that, but she was not wearing a uniform or anything formal, just your average clothes. I approached her cautiously and told Betty to be quiet. However, she didn't stop barking, which struck me as odd. Usually she's very obedient and when I tell her to quiet down, she listens. This time around, however, she just kept barking at this lady. I eventually got her distracted with a treat and approached the woman again. I first asked her who she was and if I knew her. She introduced herself and for this we will just call her Karen. She didn't clarify if we knew each other, so I just assumed that we didn't. She explained that she was the owner of the land and that I was trespassing by being there. I was confused. I told her that I'd been living here for years and that I had never seen her before. I said that I had all the necessary paperwork filled out and that I was actually the one who owned the land. I tried thinking to myself to see if I had gotten any mail for an eviction notice or maybe something like that, but I didn't have any. Maybe the government sold off my land, but it was under my ownership, so how could they possibly have done that legally? Well, Karen did not listen to any of my explanations and told me that I had to leave immediately or that I would face some consequences. I told her that this was too quick of a notice and that I did not have the resources to move there quickly. I asked to see her paperwork and documents, and that is when she started getting defensive. She said that she was a sovereign citizen and that she had a right to this land. At this point, I started recording. I highly doubted that Karen was a government agent, but if she was, I wanted evidence so I could sue and defend my rights. She noticed the phone and repeatedly told me to stop recording without her permission. In the same light, I told her that she should get off my property because she did not have my permission to be on it. We started arguing, full-blown yelling at each other. I honestly don't even remember half of what was said because it was literally a screaming match. Betty started barking too, and then before I know it, Karen reaches into her purse and pulls out a gun. It is a general rule, whether you know how to handle firearms or not, to not aim a loaded gun at someone unless you actually do want to shoot them. Because she was aiming it right at me, I knew she was not joking. Either that or she just had really bad gun safety protocols. Betty started barking louder, most likely recognizing the danger I was in. Clearly, this woman was absolutely insane. I immediately had my hands up and stepped away from her. I was worried because she could go off her rocker and shoot at Betty because she was still barking, so I told her that I would be off the property, asking her if I could just grab a few things. I grabbed my laptop and important documents, some clothes and food for Betty, and hurried out with my things. I know you're probably wondering, why didn't I call the police? But my house has thin walls and I didn't want to take too long or Karen would suspect something. Right before I was about to leave, Karen gave me a smug grin saying that she's happy to see that I acknowledged her right to the property because apparently my house is part of her independent state that she created years ago. A state which apparently is not even connected to the US, which then in return makes her a sovereign citizen as she mentioned previously. Seriously, at first I thought sovereign citizen means someone being employed by the government or something and having special rights, maybe something like a diplomat, but it seems I completely misunderstood her. Clearly, she was just a completely crazy idiot, which made her even more dangerous. I thought it would be better to just leave now and deal with it once I was far enough away. I honestly considered myself lucky enough to have gotten a chance to gather my belongings, so I hopped into my car and told Karen that she could have the house. She smiled very smugly at me and headed inside as I left. When I was far enough away, I pulled onto the side of the road and called my sister, who lives in the city. I briefly explained the situation to her and asked if I could stay at her place for a night or two. Of course, my amazing sister said yes, so I drove her, and there she made me some food and I explained in detail the situation. She told me to go to the police. Of course I was going to, but it was already late and I wanted to sleep. She would not let me sleep it off though, as that is a habit of mine when it comes to problems, and forced me into the car, driving me to the nearby police station. So there I reported Karen, showing the cops the video of our argument right to the end, where she pulled out the gun on me, which I thankfully managed to catch on camera. The police asked me if Karen was still there. I told them that when I left, Karen entered the house, so I assumed so. They surprisingly said that they would deal with it straight away, as it was better to catch Karen while she was still in the act. Luckily, the sheriff was also working at the station at the moment and decided to come along too, thinking that his presence would maybe scare Karen into leaving. I found it a little funny, but appreciated it all the same. They asked if we wanted to come with them, and I agreed, so my sister and I followed them in her car. When we reached my house, I saw that Karen had pulled her car into the front yard and parked it where I had my own car just a few hours before. The police had their sirens and lights blaring, which, from Karen's perspective, must have been pretty menacing. The sheriff and two cops approached the front door, while my sister and I hung back, watching everything unfold. They knocked on the door, and for a minute Karen did not even respond. The sheriff got impatient and pounded on the door again. Another minute passed and Karen still did not respond. Finally, the sheriff shouted, "If you don't open up in there, we have no choice but to just come in." They had a warrant, don't worry, and Karen was not there long enough to even be considered a rightful squatter. After the sheriff yelled that, Karen finally opened the door. I think she was trying to pretend that she was asleep or something, but I guess the sheriff freaked her out. She was dressed in a bathrobe, and the bathrobe 100% belonged to her, because I don't even own one, and it just made me wonder if she had brought all her stuff planning to live there. The sheriff asked if this was her property. Karen lied through her teeth and said yes, and he asked if she had the paperwork to prove it as such. Karen began stuttering, and the sheriff stepped back and revealed me and said that I was claiming to be the owner of the property and that she had driven me off with a gun. Karen scoffed and became defensive again. She said that I was a squatter and that I had broken into her home while she was away. The sheriff kept it cool, asking one of his officers to run Karen's license plate to see where she really lived, and Karen started panicking, saying this was just one of the other houses and that she has multiple, a bunch of excuses like that. That's when the sheriff asked me to come inside and show him the property deeds. I entered, although Karen kept screaming about how I shouldn't have been allowed into her home and things like that. I went into the bedroom, grabbed the deed and showed it to the sheriff, confirming my ownership of the house. After confirming, the sheriff arrested Karen for trespassing and for brandishing a weapon the way she did. She was screaming and crying like crazy, and they needed all 3 officers just to haul her off to the car because of how much she was screaming and kicking around trying to get herself free. I genuinely wonder what she was trying to do, and when they finally got Karen in the car, the sheriff said that I would probably need to show up for a court appearance just to testify and that everything would be set from there. I thanked him, and after, my sister and I got dinner in a 24/7 diner because she felt that after a crazy night like that, I deserved it. Well, sometime later, Karen was on trial for the crimes she committed. She pleaded guilty, which was the advice of her lawyer, I'm sure. I showed my evidence, which mainly consisted of the video and my own account, and Karen was swiftly convicted. She faced 3 months in jail and $2,000 in fines. I feel bad, but I'm just glad I have my property back. I know Betty is happy to have all that space to run around, but for extra security measures, I'm reinforcing the gate and adding security cameras around my property. You never know what might happen. And the next one is a super funny Am I the A-hole story about sovereign citizens once again, because we just cannot get enough of them. And by the way guys, if you ever encountered a sovereign citizen Karen in your own life, I would love to hear about it in the comments. So anyway, I've been working retail for almost 3 years now at a mid-sized electronics store in a shopping center. It is not the greatest job in the world, but it pays the bills while I finish my degree. Most days are pretty routine, help customers find what they need, run the register, restock shelves, but yesterday was anything but routine. It was Tuesday afternoon, that dead zone between lunch-evening rush where we typically only get a handful of customers. I was the only cashier on duty, with my supervisor in the back office doing paperwork. The store was quiet except for our usual ambient music and a couple browsing laptops. That's when he walked in. The guy looked to be in his mid-40s, wearing cargo shorts and a polo shirt with some kind of eagle emblem. Nothing about him screamed, "I'm about to make your day hell," at first glance. He just wandered around for about 15 minutes, occasionally asking our floor associate basic questions about various products. Eventually, he came up to my register with a decent pile of stuff: a wireless router, some cables, a portable hard drive, and a few other accessories. Must have been setting up a home office or something. I started scanning his items, making the usual small talk about the weather, and if he found everything okay. He seemed normal enough and even friendly. The total came to just over $300 with tax. That would be $319.87, I said, turning the card reader towards him. Well, that is when everything changed. His friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by what I can only describe as practiced indignation. "No, I'm not paying that tax. Your store needs to cover it," he said firmly. I thought I had misheard him. "I'm sorry? The sales tax. I'm not paying it. I'm a sovereign citizen, and under Article 3, if I refuse, no sale tax will be imposed on me." He was speaking loudly now, enough that the couple looking at laptops glanced over. "Every other store does this for me. It is my right." I've dealt with strange requests before, but this one was a first. I'm sorry, sir, but that is not how sales tax works. Everyone has to pay it. It is state law." "You are wrong," he said, leaning forward. "I have constitutional rights that supersede your corporate policies. I've done this dozens of times at other stores. They know the law, and apparently you don't." My heart was racing at this point. Was this some kind of prank? I tried again, keeping my voice calm. "Sir, I cannot just remove the tax. The system does not even allow me to do that for regular purchases." "Then get your manager," he demanded. "I'm not leaving until I get my items tax-free." I called my supervisor over the radio, trying to keep my voice level. "I need assistance at Register 1, please." While waiting, the man pulled out his phone and began recording me. "I'm documenting this violation of my rights," he informed me, pointing the camera directly at my face. "This will be evidence in my lawsuit." My supervisor arrived, a questioning look on her face. Before I could explain, the customer launched into his spiel about sovereign citizenship and Article 3, which I'm pretty sure is not even a thing related to sales tax. "Sir," my supervisor began carefully, "we are required by law to collect sales tax on all purchases. We cannot simply waive it because you ask." "Wrong," he shouted loud enough that now everyone in the store was staring. "I will sue the F out of this entire company. You have no idea who you're dealing with." He pulled out a laminated card from his wallet and thrust it at us. It looked homemade, with a bunch of legal-sounding jargon and references to various constitutional amendments. "This is my official sovereign citizen declaration. It explicitly states that I am exempt from taxation without my consent." And by the way, guys, imagine the IRS contacting you and then you just tell them that you're exempt from taxation because you're not giving your consent. What a brilliant line. Anyway, my supervisor tried reasoning with him, explaining that we could not override the POS system to remove taxes, even if we wanted to. This only made him angrier. "Every other store does this for me. Are you calling me a liar?" he demanded, his face reddening. "I spend thousands of dollars at businesses that respect my rights. You're going to lose my business forever." "I'm sorry to hear that," my supervisor replied calmly, though I could see her patience wearing thin. Then he changed tactics. "Fine, just give me the items at a discount that equals the tax amount, and problem solved." My supervisor shook her head. "We cannot do that either. That would be tax evasion." At this point, he was causing such a scene that our store manager came out from the back. The customer immediately turned his attention and camera to her, repeating his demands. Our manager was having none of it. "Sir, you have two options. Pay the full amount including tax, or leave without the merchandise. Those are your only choices." "I'm not leaving until I get what I'm legally entitled to," he shouted, now red-faced and sweating. "I stay here all day if I have to." "Then I will need to call security," our manager said firmly. "Call them, call the police. They know the law, even if you don't," he challenged. So she did exactly that. While waiting, this guy continued his rant, now filming all three of us and threatening everything from lawsuits to calling the local news to exposing our illegal taxation scheme. When our manager mentioned that the police were 2 minutes away, something changed in his demeanor. He suddenly looked at his watch and muttered something about having another appointment anyway. This is not over, he warned, abandoning his cart of merchandise. You will be hearing from my lawyer. I fought City Hall before and won. I will own this whole store when I'm done. Then he scurried out of the store just as a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot. The officers came in, but he was already gone. The rest of my shift was spent filing an incident report and listening to my coworkers either laugh about what happened or actually worried about whether this guy would actually try to sue us. Our manager assured us that this was not the first sovereign citizen she had encountered and that nothing would come of his threats. Later that evening, I looked up his Article 3 nonsense and found it is completely made up. These sovereign citizen types basically invent their own laws and then get angry when the real world does not play along. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to give this sovereign citizen his tax-free purchase? And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this one. Was OP the a-hole or not? OP further said, I was just doing my job, but he made me feel like I was personally oppressing him or something. Should I have just given in to avoid the scene? My manager backed me up, but I'm still replaying the whole incident in my head. Comment number 1, not the a-hole, sales tax is not optional and sovereign citizen claims have been rejected by every court in the country. You were literally just following the law. If you had given him a discount to offset the tax, both you and your store could get in serious trouble. These people rely on bullying and intimidation to get their way. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, the audacity of this man to record you while making completely bogus legal claims. I guarantee no legitimate store has ever given him tax-free purchases unless he had proper tax-exempt documentation. And the last comment says, you're the a-hole big time. I cannot believe how many sheep are in these comments defending tyrannical taxation. The guy was absolutely right about Article 3. It clearly states that we have the right to refuse consent for taxation. This is basic constitutional law that they don't teach you in government indoctrination centers, aka schools. I have personally used my sovereign status at dozens of establishments without issue because they know the law. By the way, what most people don't understand is that there's a difference between a person, legal fiction created by the government, and a living, breathing man/woman. When you declare yourself sovereign, you are operating outside their jurisdiction. The store could have easily clicked tax exempt, but chose to be agents of government oppression. And just so you know, courts have no authority over sovereign individuals unless we consent to their jurisdiction. That is why they always have those gold-fringed maritime flags. It is an admiralty court with no power over land-dwelling freemen. Do your research before you blindly submit to unconstitutional taxes that fund the deep state. OP, you should have respected his rights instead of calling the corporate thugs, aka police. They work for the US and not the other way around. Next time someone stands up for their God-given freedoms, maybe actually listen instead of being another mindless tax collector. And yeah guys, suffice it to say, this dude is absolutely crazy. However, with this we have reached the end of the video. Please check out my endless playlist on the left and I will see you again tomorrow.